I never expected her to remember my name, let alone the way I took my coffee when I was half awake and pretending I wasn't. Tuesday nights were for the laundromat on Cedar. Same rhythm every week. Quarters warm in my pocket, the low television bolted to the wall, playing something nobody watched, the smell of detergent that never quite left your clothes. I went late because it was quieter, because no one asked questions, because the machines sounded like breathing if you listen long enough. That's where I kept running into her. Evan's mom. I'd known her since high school in the way you know adults who exist around you, but never toward you. She used to wave from the kitchen when I came over, always with her hands wet, always mid-sentence with someone else. Back then, she felt permanent, like wallpaper. Now, she was just a woman sitting 3 chairs away, folding towels with unnecessary precision. She wore the same denim jacket every time. The sleeves were pushed up, and I kept catching myself looking at her hands, broad palms, a thin silver ring she twisted when the dryer buzzed too early. I told myself it was coincidence that we were there at the same hour. Cedar was open late. Everyone had laundry. "Hey," she said one night, looking up like she'd just remembered something she meant to say days ago. I'm sorry, Caleb," I said too quickly. I hated that I needed her to know. She smiled in a way that made me think she hadn't forgotten at all. "Right, Caleb, you still doing night classes?" I nodded, then realized she'd asked a real question. "Yeah, accounting. It's fine." "Fine's good," she said. "Better than nothing." She folded one of my socks without asking. Caught herself. Set it back on my pile like it might explode. I've been alone long enough to recognize the shape of the feeling settling in my chest. Not desire exactly. More like being noticed without being inspected. My phone buzzed sometimes, but it was always a group chat or a reminder. I had drafts of text that never went anywhere. Words that felt heavier once typed. She laughed quietly when the change machine ate her dollar. It wasn't a big laugh. Just air through her nose, shoulders lifting once. I laughed too, late, like I was checking if it was allowed. "Evan's been busy," she said, casual, but her eyes stayed on the floor. "Doesn't call much." "Yeah," I said. "He's always like that." That wasn't true, but it was easier. There were pauses where neither of us rushed to fill them. The dryers thumped. Someone's alarm went off and kept going. I folded a napkin from the vending machine into a square, then into nothing, then smoothed it flat again. When my clothes were done, I stood there longer than necessary. So did she. We both checked our phones without unlocking them. "Well," she said finally. "See you next week, I guess." "Yeah," I said. "Probably." Outside, the air was cold enough to make things feel sharper than they were. She walked to her car. I walked to mine. Halfway there, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is weird," it read. "But did you forget your thermos?" I looked down at my hands. Empty. Then back up at her car, already pulling out. I typed, "Yeah, I did," then stared at it, thumb hovering, wondering when ordinary things had started to feel like doors. She was still there when I turned back. Engine idling. Window cracked. "I can circle," she said, like she'd already decided. "Or you can just, I'll grab it," I said, already walking faster than I meant to. The thermos was where I always left it, under the plastic chair with the wobble. I picked it up and felt stupid for how relieved I was to have a reason to come back out. She'd parked again. When I handed it through the window, our fingers touched, not the dramatic kind, just a misjudged angle. Still, she pulled her hand back like she'd been surprised by heat. "Thanks," I said. "Of course," she said. Then, after a beat, "Do you want some tea?" "I made too much. It's chamomile. Nothing fancy." I should have said no. I imagined Evan's face, half-formed, like a thumbnail image that wouldn't load. I imagined my mother hearing about it in some abstract way, years later, shaking her head without asking questions. But I nodded. "Yeah, okay." Her place was a few blocks away, one of those duplexes that tried to look cheerful with plants it couldn't keep alive. Inside, everything was tidy in a way that suggested effort. Not perfection, just maintenance. A life kept moving. She poured the tea into mismatched mugs and slid one toward me across the small kitchen table. We sat. The clock on the stove blinked the wrong time. "I used to come here with Evan when he was little," she said, staring in her cup. "He'd insist on carrying the basket, like it was important." I smiled before I thought about it. He always needed a job. Still does, she said. Then, softer, I guess I liked having a place where he needed me. She said it like it was an observation she'd only just made. I didn't know what to offer back, so I told her the truth I'd been circling for months. I don't really go out much anymore. Classes, work. I keep meaning to text people, and then it's late. She nodded, like that made sense. Like she lived somewhere near that feeling. There was a lot we didn't say. That she was divorced. That I'd known her when she was a parent-shaped object, not a person. That this was the kind of thing people talked about in careful voices. She stood to rinse the mugs, and I helped without asking. We worked side by side, not touching, aware of the space between us like it was something fragile. I tried to play twice. She noticed and smiled, not unkindly. When I was leaving, she followed me to the door. The porch light buzzed. For a second, neither of us moved. "Good night, Caleb," she said. "Good night," I said. She reached out and straightened the collar of my jacket. A small, automatic motion, something she'd done 1,000 times for someone else. Her hand lingered, then dropped. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me, and then chose to look away. After that night, she stopped coming on Tuesdays. I noticed it the way you notice a chair moved slightly out of place. Not alarm, just awareness. I still went. Same quarters, same late hour. The machines didn't care. I kept folding slower, like that might change something. On the third week, I found a note taped to the change machine. Out of order. Sorry. Her handwriting. I knew because the Y leaned the wrong way. I didn't text her. I told myself it was respect, or caution, or that I didn't want to be the one to make it real. She texted me first, 2 days later. "If you're around tonight, I could use help with the shelf. It's stupidly high." I stared at the message long enough for the screen to dim. Then I typed sure. Nothing else. Her place smelled like lemon cleaner this time. The shelf was in the hallway, stacked with boxes she hadn't opened since the move. We worked quietly. She handed things up. I handed things down. Our arms brushed. We both pretended not to notice. "Evan might stop by," she said, not looking at me. "Okay," I said, too neutral. She paused, box in her hands. "I didn't mean it's fine," I said. It wasn't. After that, she kept a careful distance. Sat instead of standing next to me. Asked questions that didn't lead anywhere. I felt myself doing the same thing. Stepping back half an inch, then another. Like we were testing the floor for weight. When Evan didn't show, the house settled into a different kind of quiet. The shelf was done. The excuse was gone. She made tea again. Didn't offer chamomile. Just poured. "You don't have to keep coming over," she said. "I don't want you to think." "I don't," I said. Then stopped. I don't think you're," she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Caleb." I watched her hands wrap around the mug. The same ring. The twist. I wonder how many times she'd done that when no one was watching. "I should go," I said, standing too fast. At the door, she hesitated. One hand on the frame, the other at her side, opening and closing once. "This is complicated," she said. "I know," I said. And then, because it was already there, "I don't know what you want." She looked at me then. Really looked. Long enough that my thoughts broke into pieces. That space between us tightened, like something pulling. She stepped closer. Not all the way. Enough that I could feel her breath when she spoke. "I want you to be okay," she said. "I want footsteps. A key in the lock." Evan's voice, muffled, calling her name. We broke apart at the same time. Too fast. She smoothed her hair. I stepped back, hands in my pockets, heart loud. Evan came in, surprised and not. "Oh, hey, man." "Hey," I said. She didn't look at me again until I was at the door. Then she did. Just once. A soft gaze that felt like a question neither of us was brave enough to finish. I left with the sound of the door closing behind me, wondering how close is too close, and how you ever know until you almost don't stop. We started walking on Thursdays after that. Not planned. Just a thing that happened when the evenings got longer and the laundromat felt too small to contain what we were not saying. The route never changed. 3 blocks down, past the closed bakery with the chalkboard still advertising a special from months ago, then the small park with the bench that faced nothing in particular. We didn't sit at first. We just stood there, shoulder to shoulder, hands in pockets, like we were waiting for instructions. She talked about work, about a patient who refused to rest. I listened in the careful way you listen when you don't want to interrupt something fragile. I nodded too much. She noticed. You don't have to do that, she said. Do what? Agree with everything. I smiled, then let it fade. I'm just trying not to mess it up. She stopped walking. I took 2 more steps before realizing. When I turned back, she was looking at me like she'd finally decided something. That's exactly it, she said. You shouldn't be worried about that. Why not? She exhaled. Long sat down on the bench. I followed, leaving a polite inch between us that felt like a lie. I see the way you look at me, she said. Not accusing, just stating a fact. And she shook her head. I'm not pretending I don't feel something. But this isn't fair to you. I picked at a loose thread on my sleeve. You don't get to decide that for me. That surprised her. It surprised me too. She laughed once, softly, then went quiet. Evan asked about you, she said. Said you've been busy. There it was. The thing pressing from the side. Are you? I started then stopped. Is that why you're pulling back? She didn't answer right away. A couple walked past with a dog that refused to move. The leash went taut. Someone sighed. I'm scared, she said finally, of wanting something I can't hold without hurting someone. I leaned back, stared at the sky. I'm scared of being the thing you regret. She turned toward me then. Her knee brushed mine. Neither of us moved it away. I don't regret you, she said. Too quickly. Silence settled. Not empty. Full. My heart kept trying to say things my mouth wouldn't shape. I think about you when I shouldn't, I said. At work. In line. When my phone buzzes and it's not you. Her hand clenched in her lap. Unclenched. If I let myself, she said, barely audible, I don't know how I'd stop. I looked at her, at the lines near her eyes that deepened when she wasn't guarding them, at the familiar ring, the steady hands. Do you want me to stop coming? I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her hand, hesitated, then rested it over mine. Light. Testing. My breath caught. The world narrowed to that point of contact, warm and impossible. Her thumb moved once, a question in motion. She didn't look away. Neither did I. And sitting there, with the night holding its breath around us, I wondered, if I leaned in now, would we finally be honest, or would that be the moment everything broke? She stopped walking on Thursdays. No text. No explanation. Just absence, sudden enough to feel deliberate. The bench stayed empty the first week. I stood there longer than I meant to, hands deep in my pockets, watching the bakery sign flicker like it was trying to remember its job. I told myself she was busy. That fear had finally won, that I should be relieved. The second week, Evan showed up at my place. He hadn't been there in months. He leaned in my doorway like nothing had changed, scrolling through his phone, asking if I still had that old controller. He talked about work, about a girl he might be seeing. He mentioned his mom in passing. She's been weird lately. Quiet. Something in my chest tilted. She okay? I asked. Yeah, he said. I think she's talking to her ex again. Or trying not to. He shrugged. You know how she is. I didn't. Not like this. After he left, I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand, typing and deleting the same sentence until it stopped looking like words. Are you okay? Did I do something? I erased that one faster than the others. Days passed. Then a week. I stopped going to the laundromat at night. Changed my schedule like it was a bad habit. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened, then loosened when it wasn't her. When she finally texted, it was about nothing. I found your book. On the hallway shelf. I stared at it. The neutrality hurt more than silence. You can keep it, I typed. Then didn't send. I walked past her place once. Slowed down without meaning to. The porch light was on. Her car was there. I stood on the sidewalk, hands useless at my sides, imagining the knock. The look on her face. The things we might say or not say. I didn't knock. Later that night, I opened our thread again. Typed something honest this time. I don't know what we're doing, but I felt something change. And I'm trying to respect it. I just need to know if I imagine the rest. I read it twice. 3 times. Then I closed the app. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. Prompt 6, the climax, emotional resolution, almost equals 500 words. She showed up at my door on a Sunday afternoon. No warning. No message. Just a knock that wasn't loud enough to be confident. I opened it, and there she was, holding my book like it had weight. She looked tired. Not undone, just honest about the effort it took to stand there. "Hi," she said. "E." We stood like that for a second too long. Then she stepped inside. The apartment was cleaner than usual, like I'd been preparing without admitting it. She didn't sit right away. Walked to the window. Back to me. Finally set the book down. "I'm sorry," she said, "for disappearing." I waited. Let the silence do its work. "My ex came back into my life," she continued. "Not romantically. Just history has gravity." She gave a small, humorless smile. And Evan noticed things. Not specifics. Just enough. My chest tightened. "So, this is you choosing distance?" "Yes," she said, then shook her head. "No, this is me choosing honesty." I leaned against the counter. "Those feel like opposites." "They are," she said softly. She looked at me then, really looked. "I didn't plan for you," she said. "And that scared me more than wanting you." There it was. Not loud. Not dressed up. "I didn't want to be a phase," I said. "Or a mistake you explained away later." "You weren't," she said immediately. Then paused. "But wanting you doesn't make this sustainable." I nodded. I hated how much sense that made. We stood closer than we should have. Not touching. A familiar disciplina. "I think," she said carefully, "if we crossed that line, it would feel right for a moment, and wrong in ways that would last longer." I swallowed. "So this is where we stop." "This is where we stop," she echoed. I picked up the book, handed it back to her. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us pulled away right away. "Thank you," I said, "for everything and nothing." She smiled, sad but steady, reached out and rested her hand on my arm. "Not a promise. Not a goodbye. Just contact." "Okay," she asked. I nodded. "Okay." At the door, she hesitated, like she might turn back. Then she didn't. When it closed, the apartment felt different. Not empty, just changed. Later, my phone buzzed. A message from her, short, careful. "I'm glad I met you." I typed "me too," and this time I sent it. Time passed in the way it always does, unevenly. At first, it was deliberate. I stopped going out at night. Started waking earlier. 8:47 a.m. became my accidental ritual. Black coffee, no sugar, sitting by the window before work, watching the street decide what kind of day it would be. Life narrowed, then steadied. I didn't see her for months. Not at the laundromat. Not on Thursdays. The bench stayed a bench. The bakery stayed closed. The absence stopped aching and started settling, like furniture you don't bump into anymore. Then, one morning, the coffee shop on Maple reopened after renovations. New stools. Same counter. I went in because it was there. She was already sitting down. Not a reveal. Not dramatic. Just her, stirring tea she hadn't touched yet. Chamomile. I knew because she always waited for it to cool too long. She looked up, froze for half a second, then smiled. "Hey," she said. "Hey." We stood there, smiling like people who had learned how to carry something carefully. I ordered my coffee. Black. She noticed. Of course she did. We didn't talk about the months apart. Not then. We talked about neutral things. Work. The shop. The way the chairs were worse now. She made a dry comment about it. I laughed a second late. After that, it wasn't sudden. It was permitted. We started sharing the bench again. Not every week. Just when it made sense. Sometimes Evan was mentioned. Sometimes not. He'd moved. She was proud. That mattered. The rules changed quietly. No pretending anymore. No hovering near lines like they were cliffs. We walked. We sat. Sometimes our shoulders touched, and neither of us moved. One evening, months later, she invited me over again. Not because she needed help, just because dinner existed and there was extra. She handed me a mug. "Tea?" she asked. I shook my head. "Coffee." She smiled like she'd been waiting for that answer. We cooked badly. Burned something. Ate anyway. At the door, when I was leaving, she didn't hesitate this time. She rested her forehead against my shoulder. Not a kiss. Something steadier. "I think we're doing this," she said. I didn't ask what this meant. I just nodded. Life didn't become cinematic. It became warmer. Quieter. Mornings overlapped. Thea colet besite cafe. We folded laundry together sometimes, just because. The bench became a place to sit, not a test. One night, much later, she reached for my hand like it was the most normal thing in the world. "I'm glad we waited," she said. "Me too." And sitting there, with nothing left to prove and nothing urgent pulling us forward, I realized something simple and strange. The love didn't arrive all at once. It showed up slowly, right on time.